as you have been discussing with Rowan and Brian,
not very positive outlook for voters to choose from.
Given this consideration, what do you think will be the outcome of the election?
Well, my guess is no better than anybody else's. I can only go on what the opinion polls are saying, which is that the coalition has probably lost some ground during the election campaign after starting it, or at least towards the end of last year, being in a much stronger position than anyone would have anticipated in the aftermath of the 2022 election. There are some important pieces of political history here. No first-term government has failed to get a second term at the federal level since 1931, which was, of course, in the middle of the Great Depression. And no person who has led his party immediately after it's lost office, as Peter Dutton has been doing with the coalition since the 2022 election, no person who's led his party immediately after he lost government has ever gone on to become Prime Minister in Australia. So the coalition had a big task in front of it. Towards the end of last year, it looked as though it had a chance of succeeding in overturning two pieces of history. Political history also tells us that first-term governments of either political persuasion usually have a swing against them as they're going for a second term. But most first-term governments have come to office with very large margins that they can afford to lose some of. So, if you think back through at least the last 50 or so years, Malcolm Fraser in 1975, Bob Hawke in 1983, John Howard in 1996, Kevin Rudd in 2007, and Tony Abbott in 2013, all won from opposition in landslides. And they could therefore afford to lose a bit of skin, as it were, in their second elections, which all of them did. By contrast, Mr. Albanese's government has the smallest majority of any first-term government since John Curtin fell into office in 1943, although he did very well at the 1946 election immediately after World War II, or during World War II. But the opinion polls have moved during the election campaign in Labor's direction, and my interpretation of what they're saying about 10 days before Australians go to vote is that the most likely outcome is a minority Labor government, that is, Labor having more seats than anybody else in the parliament, but falling short of the 75 that's required to form a majority, and thus needing to, if not enter into a formal coalition, then at least come to some understanding with either the Greens, who may lose some seats in this election as well, according to opinion polls, or any of the enlarged number of independents and crossbenchers, some of whom go under the label the Teals, but not all of them, urban voters concerned in particular about climate change and issues like that. Some of them represent more conservative rural electorates, but it seems more likely than anything else that the Labor government may have to negotiate with some of them in order to ensure that they can function as a government. The second most likely alternative, according to opinion polls, is that Labor gets back for a second term with another very thin majority, but we'll have to wait at least until the 3rd of May, and maybe for some time after that, if the result is especially close, before we know who our next government is going to be composed of. People who are interested in getting a different perspective on the likely outcome of the election to be held on the 3rd of May could look at the conversation I've recorded at the end of the second last week of the campaign with our new members of InEconomics, that is Tim and Phil from Precision Economics, who've built a model that predicts election results based on a very detailed analysis of what opinion polls are saying. In some ways, it resembles the work of 538 or Real Clear Politics in the United States that have proven to be more reliable guides to the outcomes of elections than the standard opinion polls. That's worth a look too, if you want to have an insight into what might be the outcome of the election on the 3rd of May.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion. We look forward to have more chat with you in our next podcast. Thank you, Saul.